Stablecoins are the hottest thing right now, hotter than Bitcoin itself. The US government likes stablecoins and Trump says he likes stablecoins. They help the dollar. But is there something else going on? Maybe something deeper. I've got Mark Goodwin, author of The Bitcoin Dollar, here with me on Bitcoin Season 2 today to help talk through the thesis of the Bitcoin dollar and why Bitcoiners should think critically about the current situation. Bitcoin Season 2 is brought to you by Arch Network, the protocol building bridgeless apps on Bitcoin. More on Arch later in the show. Let's kick it off. Welcome back to Bitcoin Season 2. I've got Mark Goodwin. Welcome to the show, Mark. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks so much. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here, man. I've been following you guys for a little bit and really like what you guys are doing. So I'm very thankful to be here. Thanks.
Thank you. And I've been following you for quite a bit too. I used to recommend as my favorite Bitcoin book, The Block Size War by Jonathan Beer. But that has now been joined by, if you're watching this, I have a physical copy of Mark's The Bitcoin Dollar, an economic monomyth here with me as my pair that I recommend to people. Mark, it's been like a couple years since you published this, which means you've been noodling on this idea for many more years. I'll have you explain that in a second, but I actually just want to jump in hot. We're gonna drop into the deep end. This past week, we saw the new Avengers supergroup of stablecoins assemble under a strategy rival, 21, Mallers, Cantor, Bitfinex, and Tether. I want to get your take on this. What's going through your head here?
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of laughed when I saw it, just sort of like, yep, of course. It's the same thing to me as when I see, I think it was like within hours of each other. It's like Coinbase and PayPal are partnering for their stablecoin. It's just, we're seeing all the parties that seemingly were disconnected and operating in their own lanes, like all coming together. And it's like, oh yeah, like this is the meta cabal, the cartel, whatever the hell you want to say. And obviously that's a dirty word and implies a lot of mean things. And I don't even necessarily mean it like that. I think that's an important thing that I got to always stress with my work is like, I'm not saying these are bad people. It's just the mechanisms are the thing that I have an issue with, which is to get to the book, why I wrote the book the way that I did, which doesn't mention anybody's names really. Of course I talk about Tether and, USDC gets mentioned and whatever, but it's really about the mechanism, the yoking of the dollar system to Bitcoin using stablecoins. And so really it's just the last, 6 months or so from kind of the Trump winning to, now Trump being in office for a few months. It's like just sort of seeing all the companies that have built all of these mechanisms all kind of coming together under one umbrella has just been kind of, I would guess, kind of fun. I mean, I don't know. It's a little scary and a little like I'd rather be wrong than be so right, obviously. But yeah, I mean, I got nothing against Jack personally. I mean, he's a nice guy. I've met him before. And I think, Strike is an interesting product. I think a lot of people have used it and have had good things because of it. But, they've been associated with Tether for a very long time. The El Salvador experiment has a big Tether stink to it, I suppose you could say.
Especially now because they've been officially banned from buying Bitcoin, although Bukele still buys a Bitcoin every now and then, it appears.
Yeah. It's interesting, but there's always kind of been this, the Chivo wallet was, kind of a Strike partnership. There were some other groups sort of involved there, but, Tether is now going to El Salvador and, we're seeing kind of the Tetherification, just kind of being more overt. And I'm not interested in it. I just don't care. It's like, oh, great. Another vehicle of some, bros using other people's money and these debt products to buy Bitcoin. I'm not interested in it. It's going to pump my bags and I'll be able to do more cool stuff because I'll be more financialized and more funded. Great. I do think that's a cool thing about Bitcoin, and it's something I've been stressing for a while. Let Wall Street pump your bags. That's cool, but do something dissonant with it, push back with it, build alternative economies, exit and build, do stuff with this opportunity. Because there is an absolute chance here that Bitcoin really financializes and becomes worth millions of dollars a coin, trillions of dollars in market cap, and there's not necessarily more freedom in the world just because of it, right? It's not this deus ex machina that just fixes everything. The money being broken is a very serious problem. Bitcoin being this politically neutral, monetary policy that can't be fucked with for a lot of reasons is great. Like, that's very good. But there's sort of this awkward period which we are in right now, where there might be the ability for the US government to use the financialization of Bitcoin to basically debt pardon and do the largest debt pardon, kind of in history, and get out from underneath all of this crap that they've kind of put the world under their heel of their boot. And they might be able to sort of get away with it, remaining the economic hegemon of the world, the US dollar. And it's sort of a backwards, it's really hard for Bitcoiners to kind of grok that, because they're 140 years ahead. They're at 2140. The subsidy has stopped, and they're over there, and they're like, Bitcoin is so great, and this, and it's like, well, but we're in this awkward period where, we might not see, all of the amazing altruistic things at first, because there's going to be a bunch of bad people using this technology too, inevitably.
Yeah.
Right?
You actually, maybe to like set the stage really well, you used a word that I don't hear a lot of Bitcoiners use anymore, which is exit. And I think that may help like frame kind of where I come from, and I assume you do, which is Bitcoin is this way to exit this fiat regime. And in it's like funny, in the past 12, 18 months, we've really seen Bitcoin celebrated as integration with the existing regime.
Right.
Talk to me about, if the listener thinks that Bitcoin is this institutionalized asset, and it's great because it pumps our bags, I'm happy, but, compel the listener why exit is this powerful tool and why you believe in that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think, Bitcoin, or rather, well, Bitcoin, yes, but money is an energy system. All monies that are worth their that have, velocity and volume, have some sort of asset backing it, whether it's by metal standards or, even the petrodollar to some degree. And certainly the Bitcoin system, there's this energy component, which is what you want. You want money to have an energy component so that it can't be debased very easily without an expenditure of a lot of energy to source more of the tokens or of the metals or the barrels of oil, whatever it is, right? The old adage of money doesn't grow on trees. Well, there's no energy really expended to harvest leaves from a tree. So if your money system is based on leaves, it can be debased really quickly, and you have no kind of like store of value sort of, your currency just gets debased really quickly, and you can't really store your value in it. And so when you're working for money and you're expending energy into this monetary system to gain more dollars, more leaves or whatnot, you want that currency that you save your time into to retain as much of that energy as possible. Now, these metaphors of energy get super confused and lost when people are calling Bitcoin digital energy and all this. It's not, but there is a metaphor to it that resonates with people, which is fine, that, there is a absolutely an energy loop in currency systems and in monetary systems. And when you are participating in one, you are putting your energy into that monetary system. And if you allow your energy to be debased and vacuumed by the money lenders, by the people running the financial system that are tweaking the monetary policy levers, at whim, you are giving them consent energetically to, take your time and your energy and debase it. And so exiting is really important, because if you can exit into some sort of monetary system, be it goods, be it Bitcoin, be it whatever, that doesn't allow your time and your energy and your work and all of this effort that you've put into building your life, if you can put it into a system that can't be debased at the whim of a political lever, you can actually meaningfully disengage with a very nasty, powerful system. I think the fiat system has been very dangerous. And I think the US monetary system is very predatorial, and it's really done a lot of negative things to the world. Also, money is important. It allows us to scale trust. It allows us to scale beyond, 12 people in a village. And, money is not the issue. It's not money as a technology itself. It's money that has a technological burden that it is, being able to be affected by humans so easily. And that's the issue with the fiat system, is humans are corruptible. Humans being next to those levers where they're like, oh, if I pull this, I'm a billionaire. And if I pull, it's too much temptation. And they're too incentivized to tweak the levers for the betterment of their families, for their companies, for their good. And we've seen that a lot recently. And that's a bad thing. And when we're all participating in that system, we're giving them consent and we're getting debased all the time. 2% being the target inflation, 2% over, okay, we're all like maybe in our 30s now or whatever. Like, that's an insane amount of debasement. And that's just the target. And obviously it's way more than that, but that's like the agreed upon, debasement. It's kind of, that's not a system that really benefits the people. And money should be a system that benefits the people as much as possible. I mean, we can look at it, as a technology that should be tweaked to benefit as many of the people that are using it as possible. And right now it's the inverse. And right now it benefits the smallest amount of people as possible. So exiting is really important. Get out of a system that benefits the few and try to get into a system that benefits the majority. And I think we'll have a better world because of it, right? And exiting can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, and it should mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, because what's exiting for me might not be the same for my parents, for my brothers, for you, for my friends. But you have to figure out what you want to consent to. What systems do you want to participate in and be a part of? And I've just chosen, I don't want to be a part of the US system right now. I don't want to be a part of the US dollar system, the military industrial complex, the DARPA social networks, a lot of the panopticon incoming via a lot of these kind of fintech companies and tech companies. I'm just not interested in it. I've been let down very hard by a lot of these institutions. I think that they're a net negative and will continue to be. So I've set up my life in a way that I'm pretty exited. People like to shit on me for my anti-stablecoin stance. They're like, well, you still use dollars and this. And it's like, you don't know what I use. You don't know where I live. You don't know what I do. And I assure you,
point of that consent to revealing that ever. I'll jump in here, and it's interesting that you frame it like this, because a lot of what you talked about, you do talk about Bitcoin, you do talk about dollars, but you're really talking about monetary systems. And that's how you start the book, actually. I think you have a line, I was trying to find it, where I think you say something like, if I could talk about this without using the words dollar or Bitcoin, I would. However, they're interlinked, or they're very relevant in this time. And so this is where I want to direct you to, because you take a very, very zoomed out look. A lot of politics and political infighting is about what we do the next 4 years, but you've taken a at the smallest scope, a half century look at post World War II U.S. Dollar hegemony. And you present, as you said at the beginning of this conversation, this Bitcoin dollar idea. And while Bitcoiners are focused in 2140, we may be losing sight of what the path that it requires for us to get there. In a way where Bitcoin is this tool of the people instead of this tool of the state. I invite you to try to, as concisely as possible, summarize what is the Bitcoin dollar. Like, person at the bar has, they just order their tab and they're on the way out, and they're like, okay, what do I take home with me about what the Bitcoin dollar is? What is that?
Yeah,
And then we'll dive into it.
yeah, sure. So 35-minute rant incoming. No, no, I try not to do that. Well, so yeah, I appreciate you pulling out that line. Like if I could have written this book without using the word dollar or Bitcoin, I would have, because it is, and that's why I subtitled the book The Economic Monomyth, where it's this is a continual pattern that humans have had to deal with as technology has evolved, the technology of money, the technology of communication, as communication technology and money have merged, and as humanity has just scaled. Now we're kind of reaching we're reaching full blocks of like human, like Earth communication. We're really saturated with communication, and as that has happened, we've been able to develop new monetary tools because communication has advanced so much. And obviously, I talk a lot about PayPal Mafia, blah, 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 but people don't really actually talk about PayPal itself. Slight little tangent here, but they really made the dollar sort of the reserve or the currency of the internet. They were the first ones to really successfully do it. They had a marketplace with eBay, who later bought the company, and they were able to kind of make the dollar the native currency of the internet. And that was a really important thing that happened. They were really developed and influenced, by U.S. intelligence and by the U.S. dollar system. They were incentivized basically to find a method to continue dollar hegemony at a time when it looked like, maybe the dollar system would start to lose out to, the BRICS sort of kind of group, right? So, we've had a lot of financial issues in the last 20 years that should have probably made the dollar system, give up some of its control. But what we've learned by studying history the last 50 years is the dollar system will do whatever it takes to stay ahead, to remain the economic hegemon, and they will use anything at their disposal to do it. And the issue that the dollar system has basically come into since they moved from gold to the petrodollar system, which we'll talk about, is the dollar system has, they want to get as many people having demand for dollars as possible on net, whereas they don't necessarily care about the individual purchasing power of the dollar. And that's how the dollar system has retained its hegemony. So as it's lost individual purchasing power, it's globalized and has had more users and more people saving in dollars than ever. And they've used a lot of little clever tricks to do that. That's the first sort of beat, is we know that the dollar system will do whatever it takes, technology, whatever, to retain status. So once we know that, and we know that that's the stakes here, let's examine the Bitcoin system and what's being built and say, is it possible that this is the next evolution of what we have seen historically of the US dollar system playing rhetoric games, playing dialectic games to push out a technology that maybe at first seems negative to the dollar, but actually is very positive. So I use the analog, the second beat here, that the petrodollar is an energy-based system, much like the Bitcoin dollar system. There's obviously some differences, or much like the Bitcoin system, but there are some differences. And the main impetus for creating the petrodollar system was to get as many people demanding dollars as possible using a clever trick of basically, let's price this thing that everyone needs to industrialize. Everyone doesn't necessarily need gold to industrialize. They just use it because it's a good store of value. You can use it in components. Sure, it's pretty, but it's really the monetary value of it that has allowed it to globalize. But no one really needs it. But oil is something that people really needed in the 70s, to now, when the petrodollar system really, really was created. If you wanted to industrialize and keep up in the modern industrial revolution, you needed to buy oil. And there's not a lot of people that were producing oil like at a cost benefit that was really beneficial for like Eurasia to industrialize. So the U.S. government did a really clever thing. They're dealing with really high inflationary. We go off the gold standard in 71, mainly because being on a gold standard, a hard money standard, actually affects your ability to grow, because you can only grow at the rate of the gold coming out of the ground if your economic system is limited by the amount of gold coming out of the ground. There's only X amount of dollars relative to how much gold's coming out of the ground. Our growth is literally limited by gold coming out of the ground. I've said it like 3 times, but that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So in the 70s, we cut off the gold standard. Nixon closes the gold window. And immediately we start going into the Middle East and making political deals with Saudi Arabia and with oil producers to say, hey, we'll give you military backing because we have that. Post World War II, we're the kings of the arms race. Price all the oil that you sell to everybody in dollars. And what that does is it makes our ability to print money. We can print treasuries and print dollars all day. And anybody that wants to buy oil has to buy our dollars first to be able to purchase oil. And we create an unbelievable amount of artificial demand for dollars just by having that political agreement of, you want to buy oil, you got to buy dollars first. And that really worked for a really long time. We were able to shovel the inflationary effects of coming off the gold standard into this newfound dollar demand that was created purely by political and military force. And, we saw that. We saw a bunch of wars in the Middle East, a ton of military presence from the US for decades, basically keeping up this system. And then as we modernize a little bit, as the internet really exploded, and things began to get, more and more digital, the incoming digital revolution of money had been talked about. I would say well before the 90s, even before the internet really was understood. People knew that, okay, computers are going to change things. The world of bits is going to become the new map for money versus the world of atoms. And we can, we'll really move into that. However that takes place, we're not exactly sure, but certainly it's a lot easier to move bits around than it is to move barrels of oil or pallets of gold or cash even. So I think the inevitability of just going from the world of bits from the world of atoms was going to make a more efficient and higher velocity monetary system, which again is what the US dollar system wants. It's what all monetary systems want. So, we saw basically 2008, the US dollar system has its first really big crisis, where all of the collateralized debt obligations that were getting synthesized and chopped up by all these really interesting, innovative, bankers and deregulators. That was a huge part of it. They basically blew up the world economy. I'm being very reductive here because I'm trying to do this not in a 35-minute rant.
No, basically, this makes sense. Yeah, no, I'm tracking with. I actually instead of closing out my tab, I ordered another round because you're so compelling. So keep going.
Great. Put the drinks out here, please. Soda water for me. Monetary system, but in 2008. So everything starts to kind of explode because the debt system has sort of been repackaging its debt in all these creative ways over and over again, and everybody just kind of playing musical chairs with this debt as it balloons out and balloons out and balloons out. And then finally, it was blown up. And you could argue it was blown up on purpose. You could argue it was a controlled demolition. You could argue that it wasn't, and it was just a runaway, speculative attack that just blew up. But the end result of it was, there was a lot of money that needed to be repaid back to the banks because the banks were playing with America's mortgages, and who was able to come out and pay for the banks and bail them out. It was the taxpayer via the U.S. government in these bailouts. And it's really funny when you look at the COVID era bailouts to the 2008 bailouts, it's like pennies. I mean, it's an embarrassingly little amount of money, but at the time it was a ton of money.
It was hundreds of billions of dollars. Now we're like,
hundreds of billions.
We'll throw another trillion on there. No big. Well,
yeah. And now, I mean, under Trump 1, it was, and again, this is an important part of the mirroring. Also, it happened right in between two administrations of a swapping from the left to the right or the right to the left. So, 2007 Bush, Obama wins in 2008, but the actual, he comes in 2009 and, signs the bailouts, but they were kind of Bush, sort of Obama, Democrats blame Bush, Republicans blame Obama. Nobody blames the banks that blew everything
still
up.
happened regardless.
The
Yeah.
bailout still happened regardless. And interestingly enough, as we know, as Bitcoiners, Halloween 2008, as the US is dealing with this crisis, some anonymous guy releases the white paper that for Bitcoin, which basically comes up with this idea of this politically neutral, disinflationary monetary system that's native to the internet, yada, yada. That's kind of coming out at this perfect time as the US is really starting to print money. That's the real beginning of QE, of sort of the US really starting to print exponential amounts of money, where the debt starts to run away from us because of all the money printing. It's very convenient that the system that is exactly what the US dollar system needs is presented at exactly the time when the US dollar system needs this type of neutral reserve asset to basically solve this Triffin dilemma. Sort of the issue of having the world reserve currency is that your currency is very strong. It's hard to grow your economy because everything that you make in-house, you have to pay with your own currency, with its dollars, which is very expensive versus everything else. And other countries get to export their goods for a lot cheaper, blah, 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 blah. That would be another 35-minute rant. But Bitcoin kind of comes out at this perfect time where the US dollar system is in need of something like this. And then, of course, it gets sort of it becomes this drug money. It becomes black market money. It's this cypherpunk thing, this libertarian thing, this anti-state thing. And that's really the messaging that gets pushed out for years. That's what I got interested in it. I'm sure that's what you got interested in it. And it was really labeled as kind of this is going to end fiat central banking forever. This is amazing. And in many ways, that is true. I think it will end central banking. But maybe not the US dollar central bank, but maybe everyone else's, when you have basically this really nice neutral reserve asset that can be the dollar demand source like petrol was, but then you allow these stable coin dollar tokens to proliferate on the internet. Every central bank and every government around the world loses the ability to have capital controls on their citizens. No one wants to hold national regional currency. They want dollars for like kind of week to week spending. And then they want Bitcoin for month to year savings. And so you create a situation where central banks kind of don't really have any control over their citizens. And the internet has just kind of dissolved the ability for the central bank and the nation state to control the monetary capital flight of its citizens. So we see Bitcoin coming out. It's being kind of distracted, that it's this anti-state thing. And people aren't really seeing that there's maybe a bigger play of the US dollar system, needing this reserve asset to inflate into as the US dollar starts to print trillions of dollars a year versus the hundreds of billions, which of course we saw in 2020. Bitcoin has presented itself as that option, and we see it pairing exactly as we did in 2008, where the COVID crisis, the lockdowns, that's where we really start to see, the largest money printing in history, $6-7 trillion, no problem. And what are we seeing at that exact same time in the Bitcoin space? So that's March 2020 is when the COVID lockdowns happen. We see gold go, tits up. We see oil, which is the backbone of our currency, literally go negative in futures markets, right?
I remember that day, yeah.
It was crazy, yeah. And then we saw Bitcoin drop to like $3,000. And if you were sort of equipped with the knowledge and I thankfully was, and I'm manically running around my street calling all my loved ones being like, just put $1,000 in Bitcoin right now. Just do it. I don't know. Just do it. I know everything's insane. Just just do it. And if you were sort of equipped with that, Bitcoin 20x'd in 12 months from that, it went up to, basically $70,000. But what did we see with Bitcoin's monetary policy, right? So in May 2020, that was the halving that brought the relative issuance of Bitcoin below the rate of gold coming out of the ground.
It was
right?
poetic. That was a very poetic sequence of events that I don't think many appreciate. Even a lot of Bitcoiners don't appreciate that beat of COVID, crisis, crash, halving, issuance. and the perfect
20x.
20x inverse, in trading places and in inflation rate, crazy like sequence of events. Let me tell you about one of the most slept on opportunities in crypto. Arch is building fast, composable DeFi apps on Bitcoin. Arch apps tap into the OG blockchain with by far the most liquidity and best brand in crypto. I've known the team for over a year. The tech they're building is solid, and they are racing towards mainnet. There's DEXs like Saturn, meme coins on FunkyBit.fun, instant loans on Cha-Ching, and so much more. Plus, they're rewarding testnet users, so join me in trying out Arch while it's still early.
Like a lot of us, and I don't want to, get us demonetized or guess whatever, but a lot of us were distracted, I think, by COVID era discourse of, medical stuff and this and whatever. I mean, it was just a very crazy time. It was the burst of sort of independent media really taking over this sort of I would argue destructed on purpose, the controlled demolition of legacy media, of government trust. There was sort of this, let's destroy the institutions that people trust and let's replace them with like the new thing at this very important volatile time. And now we're kind of seeing that playing out here of the new boss is kind of the old boss, and we're seeing legacy media kind of start to just become state media. All these people that were these super dissonant, Biden sucks and COVID's terrible and the government stinks, and now like they're just state media now going off about Trump. I think it's okay if you like Trump. I don't personally, but these guys that were supposed to hold the powers that be accountable, that were propped up in this COVID era as being dissonants, are now might as well be state media.
He's a great guy. Wow. He's got a couple things, but wow, he's really improved a lot on the second administration. He's this great guy now. Right.
And again, you have every right to have whatever political opinion you want. Sure. But I think we witnessed this sort of controlled demolition to just be replaced by the new thing. And we sort of saw that in the monetary system as well, that there was like a whole bunch of things being thrown at us in that period when we were all locked in our homes and we're online, and we kind of like, it was the start of the transition to, reality is on your phone and reality is on your screen. And, we saw the GameStop stuff pop off and Wall Street bets. And, it was just this very weird time where we're getting bombarded with all of this, setup for what you could argue is the new financial system and the new like way of life, the new normal. And you need an event like a lockdown, like COVID, to kick that off, to have that volatility that day in March where oil goes negative and all these things. To set up a new financial system, you need a volatile moment like that for the debt parties to then close their positions and reposition them as the wave is cresting. And we saw the US dollar system do that. We absolutely did. The US dollar did not go down because of the COVID lockdowns. We raised rates faster than ever in history, and the US dollar surged versus all of these other countries when we did this coordinated central banking, told everybody to bring interest rates to zero, below zero, and then we start paying everybody 5% to buy our treasuries. And so in 2020, right, going into 2020, Bitcoin is issuing faster than gold, faster than oil. And there's like $10 billion of stablecoins, not even. The whole market cap of Tether was below double digit billions going into 2020. And then we saw interest rates go up, which is directly connected to treasury sales. We see Tether start buying up an insane amount of treasuries. Tether's now at like 150 billion, basically. And Bitcoin is at $95,000, went past 100K. Gold is at an all-time high. And we saw the US dollar system really position itself very well to deal with the volatility that took place. Despite printing trillions of dollars, US dollar system is in really good shape versus the other fiat currencies in the world. It's very over-levered against itself. We now have to deal with this $36 trillion of debt. That was an inevitability. We added trillions and trillions in this process, but we are well in position over all the other currencies of the world. The US government holds more Bitcoin than anyone else. The US purchasing economy holds more Bitcoin than anybody else. We have the most to gain from Bitcoin monetizing. If we wanted to pay off our debts using gold, we could, but we would make every other country in the world extremely rich too if we, decided to make gold $10,000 an ounce with a political decree. We'd make China, Russia, all these other holders really, really rich. If we did it with Bitcoin, not so much. We would really be even further pushed ahead as the hegemonic emperor, right? So there's a very large case to be made that I would say the US dollar system, whether it was just through incentives, whether it was by design, to me is almost irrelevant. The issue is just sort of what could happen and what is happening, and what are the mechanisms. And so as I look at the dollar system looking to transmute into the 21st century, and the digitalization of finance, I'm seeing a neutral reserve asset appearing at the perfect time for the dollar system that actually has a lot of issues technologically of being a medium of exchange that could serve 8 billion people. But it can be a very nice reserve asset, a very nice digital gold when paired with these dollar stablecoins that can move very quickly, that are privately issued, that are backed by US debt, by treasuries. And when we create this sort of money market for Bitcoin, we can let Bitcoin be worth millions and millions of dollars. And then, we are actually creating a ton of dollar demand. Like, think about it this way, right? If I bought $1,000 of Bitcoin and then Bitcoin 100x's, now I have $100,000 and I want to sell, just a small percentage of it, 10% to get into dollars. I've created $9,000 of dollar demand when I sell my $10,000 after only putting in $1,000. So even though I'm using Bitcoin and my dollar, my unit of account is Bitcoin, if I want to go out into dollars to buy something in dollars, I'm creating $9,000 net of dollar demand by selling only 10% of my 100K Bitcoin. So you look at that on a huge level, you look at that on $1 trillion market cap scale. We actually, by monetizing Bitcoin, financializing Bitcoin, we're generating an insane amount of dollar demand, trillions of dollars, at the most important time when the US dollar system needs dollar demand, right? That, to me, it seems impossible that that's a coincidence. It seems extremely likely that the mechanisms and the people that are building these systems are pushing towards Bitcoin is store of value, not so good at medium of exchange. Only 1 million people can kind of reasonably hold UTXOs or whatever. I just pulled that number out of my ass. But, not that many people can really hold that much Bitcoin. It's just sort of true of where we are now. No one in the Bitcoin space really seems to care about that as long as our bags get pumped by Poppy Warp Speed and Larry Fink. And we can use stable coins as our day-to-day payment system to buy coffee and everything's hunky-dory because we're rich. Well, how many people really hold Bitcoin? How many people really get the freedom money element of Bitcoin versus the state being empowered to find a way to pay off their fiscal irresponsibility for the last 50 years? So that's sort of the Bitcoin dollar. I think I did it in about 20 minutes.
Actually, that was pretty good. That was pretty succinct. Okay, so let me take this and direct us. I want to talk more about the actual mechanisms of stable coins, because as you say, as you've laid out here, the path that we got here and the whys and the hows, less relevant than looking at the existing landscape of incentive, which is even the Bitcoiners, even like the anti-state Bitcoiners are starting to now, in some ways, roll over, or at least just acknowledge, wow, Bitcoin actually does present this interesting path for the United States. And what's funny is it's kind of evolved out of this, a favorite topic that we Bitcoiners like to talk about, which is nation state game theory. And us being well, look at this. We're actually winning because we're smarter than everybody else. We know what the game theory is, and we're executing on it. Good job, us. Pat on the back.
Right.
And if I understand right, the primary instrument of doing this is through the proliferation of stable coins. I want you to elaborate more on exactly the landscape of stable coins. This is your opportunity to dig into more of the PayPal end the tether. I'll unshackle you to be a little more candid about this topic. Like, what are the mechanisms and how do these work? Maybe how does it work over the next few years, given the current trajectory?
Yeah, so I love to be unshackled. Thank you very much. There's a bunch of things to hit on here. I think first, let's look at the technology of it, and then we'll get in the economics of it, and then we'll get into the legal part of it. So, what did I say first? Technology. So, they are privately issued tokens that operate on public blockchains. That is a very big issue in regards to surveillance, because it allows an opportunity for anyone that can do heuristic analysis of these public blockchains, which granted is hard to do, and granted requires a lot of data caches that are independent of the blockchain to reasonably heuristically analyze a payment, and requires generally a lot of computational power to analyze large data sets, right? But when you look at, the nation state threat of surveillance of an intelligence agency, there's actually a lot of agencies that have all of those things, that have the data caches that are independent of the blockchain, IP addresses, bank financial statements, social media heuristic stuff where, oh, hey, I posted on Twitter that I bought Bitcoin today on the stack chain, thing or whatever. And then they can heuristically find that and be like, oh, okay, well, we think it's, even though he's a NIM, he's posting from Wichita, Kansas at this time of day.
Doesn't
and this,
matter.
and
I blurred out the first 5 digits of my River,
Right.
screenshot purchase.
Right. And it's fun. I get it. It's fun.
I love
Probably
it. That's
not
cool.
smart.
That's fun. Gets more people to buy it, but
Probably, yeah. And obviously, privacy is sort of a group game, and the better the group is at all of these things, the easier it is for everybody. And when one person is irresponsible with this stuff, it does kind of affect everybody, because it makes it easier to heuristically find these webs if one person in the web is very inappropriate or irresponsible. But regardless, the private issued token bears a lot of issues, because the private issuers can blacklist them, seize them, work with law enforcement, which we are seeing. And then the public blockchain brings up this whole issue of warrantless surveillance, because if you have the ingredients you need to successfully do heuristic analysis, you no longer need law enforcement warrants to be able to analyze transactional data, because it's literally a public blockchain. You can just download it and find all the transactions that are ever made on Ethereum are, public. And if you have any sort of, nation state capabilities of intelligence, you can more or less find everything on the blockchain. That's like the whole thing that makes Bitcoin cool, is its immutable, fidelity to Genesis. We can see every transaction and everything all the way back to the beginning. That's what makes it a really good store of value, but also it makes it kind of a surveillance wet dream in a lot of ways. But stable coins are a lot worse, because there's a private issuer to this rather than this decentralized issuer. So they can blacklist them, they can seize them. And then when we get into kind of the financial aspect of these stable coins, the way that they actually work is they have to, like private capital creation in the legacy financial system, banks or private issuers in this case have to buy US debt in the form of treasury securities from the US government. From the treasury, they issue the bonds, the Fed kind of sets the yield on them, the rate, and together, they make the dollar system by selling US debt and treasuries to banks. JP Morgan will buy a treasury, and then it will create the dollars in your bank account, and it will back them with the treasuries. And we're seeing that two-tier banking system of treasuries and dollars just being recreated on the blockchain. And the issue with that, as it relates to the surveillance and seizability aspect, is that yes, these are private issuers, which is cool, better than CBDCs, right? We don't want government issuing our currency. That's terrible. We could never want that. But when you create a two-tier banking system and you have a private issuer that doesn't have constitutional protections, that doesn't have to protect its customers constitutionally, but holds $150 billion of treasuries from the US government and is at the whim of the US government, who at any point could say, you can't buy treasuries anymore. You can't hold treasuries. We're closing your account at the Fed. We're closing your account at Cantor. We're not letting you, we're seizing your treasuries because you're funding Hamas or whatever they want to say. We're taking $150 billion of treasuries from you and destroying the most profitable business in the world of dollar printing, unless you onboard the FBI, onboard the Secret Service, and onboard, chain analysis, which was funded by the CIA's venture capital fund, In-Q-Tel, right? And that's literally what happened on Tether. All of those things happen. FBI, Secret Service, and In-Q-Tel are on the system of Tether because Tether doesn't have the ability to say, F you, to the US government because they have $145 billion of treasuries that they would like to keep because they earn 4% on that and they make billions and billions of dollars and they have like 3 employees and they make like $1 billion a month on interest, right? I mean,
we're in the wrong business. The talking head business. We should have been in the, we should have gone Tether back. I don't know what.
Yeah, man. Well, there's a lot of people in the talking head business that are also in the Tether business, but that's
true.
a different argument altogether.
Too.
That is a different argument altogether.
That's a whole other,
a whole other coconut, which is worth talking about, but maybe not today. So we obviously technologically we have these issues with public blockchains, private tokens, warrantless surveillance. Then we have the financial issue of if it's a 2-tier banking system, the issuers are really beholden to the US government. And this is just something we've seen. This isn't speculation. Literally, that is true. Law enforcement intelligence is on the Tether platform. And there is a $145 billion incentive for why they are on there. And that's not going to stop. And there isn't going to be some badass private issuer guy who wears a hoodie who comes out and starts a new company and is like, I'm going to say fuck you to the treasury, even though I have 100
shadowy stablecoin issuers.
yeah, not going to happen. Where we could see super shadowy stablecoin issuers, or rather coders, is in the creative world of not US Treasury backed stablecoins. That is cool. I am not against the unit of account of the dollar. Not against it. What I'm against is we are buying government debt, and the US government, while it does get a lot of things right constitutionally, and I'm lucky that I can say all of these things, I understand that, right? There's a lot of good of the US in that sense. I can criticize and say all these things because the Constitution protects it. That's great for now, right? That's great. But it is the largest terrorist organization in the world, and it has been fucking everybody up for a really long time in a lot of different places. And I'm not a fan of that. I don't want to participate in it, and I don't want to buy US government debt when I think they're doing a whole bunch of bad things. So can we create a unit of account that is a dollar, that is stable, that doesn't buy US debt? And I think we can. Unfortunately, and there are people working on really cool things, stable channels, and there are really clever ways to create the idea of the dollar without backing it with US debt. And check out Stablecoins and Tony's work. I think it's very interesting. He was in the stablecoin regime, was working at one of the worst groups there, and I talked to him in Azores, and he was like, hey, I read your book and checked out your stuff and this, and I fuck that shit, and let's try to figure it out. And that's awesome. Like, yes, go do it, build it. I'm not against the idea of the dollar. I'm against the practical reality of the 2-tier banking system and what that actually means. You're buying US debt and you're enabling this government to do all the shady bullshit that it does. That said, what is actually going to happen? What has happened? We saw the Terra Luna experiment, which was let's create a dollar stablecoin backed by Bitcoin. Well, a whole bunch of currency traders got in there and found a way to break the peg and blew it up. And those people are, heavily related to the Tether group. I don't think that it was an accident that happened, that you look at the FTT token and Alameda Research, who's like was the biggest Tether company, had $30 billion of Tether going in and out. One of the reasons why FTX blew up was because of Terra Luna blowing up. Where did all the Bitcoin go that Terra Luna bought? 33,000 Bitcoin were liquidated on Binance. Yeah, exactly. So when you create, again, kind of a perfect scenario of hey, we can't have algorithmic stablecoins. We can't have Bitcoin-backed stablecoins because they're so dangerous. Because remember what happened with Terra Luna. And those are things Senator Lummis is saying, Senator Gillibrand is saying. In these stablecoin bills themselves, they have clauses in there that say no algorithmic backed stablecoins. They can only be backed by short-term treasuries. They can only be in federally regulated custodians. And they're creating literally the groundwork for even people outside the United States. They can't create US dollar backed instruments. They are now, they have to be in the regulatory system of the US government if they want to make dollar instruments. There's a lot of stuff that's happening in the legal clarity, right? That's supposed to be coming. There's a reason why we haven't seen any of the Bitcoin stuff really go through outside of this sort of executive order creating the SBR that really was just like, they haven't announced buying. It's just all the stuff we already have. We're just putting it in a different wallet and calling it the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve. We won't see any Bitcoin clarity until the stablecoin stuff is passed, because that is the mechanism, as I explained earlier, that how to create dollar demand from the financialization of Bitcoin. You have to have that set up, the dollar system set up where they are buying debt. And we do have that dollar demand that is intrinsically linked to the treasury system, so that we have stablecoin issuers. You want to issue $1 trillion of stablecoins, you better buy $1 trillion of debt first. And that is the environment that we're in now. And so you look at a lot of the regulatory clarity that's supposed to come, and it's all about king-making the stablecoin issuers of the Fed and of the banking system that runs the Fed and of the people that lobbied the governors and the congressmen and what have you. We have seen a king-making environment like none other. The Trump administration 2.0 is the biggest pay-to-play administration ever. I mean, they literally did a shit coin, a Solana meme coin, gets billions of dollars of outside funding from anywhere. We have no idea where that money comes in. We know the insiders that are connected to the Trump administration that get that unlock, right? And then literally the day after they unlock, a ridiculous amount of tokens to the issuers, then they announce, well, if you actually are in the top 220 holders of this coin, you get to have a meeting with the president. I mean, that should be very illegal. It's insane that sort of level of corruption is going on. It's nuts.
It's kind of hilarious. You've got, I mean, it cracks me up. I can't believe it's actually happening.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Everything is so insane now. The hyper normalization of just, it's like, oh wow, Trump launched a meme coin. Oh, and his wife launched a meme coin, and it's just, we're like so bombarded with stuff we don't even.
Yeah, I thought I had to donate through some dark money group. Now I can just buy a meme coin.
Yeah. I can just literally, I mean, anybody could have bought that Solana meme coin. I mean, there's a lot of supposed, and again, any rule that's made by a government is meant to be broken by the people that they want to break it. But, there are a lot of rules of what you can fundraise with, how you can give money to presidents and political candidates and all this. There's a lot of laws about that. They just totally circumnavigated all of that. All foreign interests can buy billions of dollars of Trump coin, and it goes to that party, right? Now they're doing World Liberty Financial, all this stuff. Anyways, long story short, the regulatory regime has been in place for a long time to make the stablecoin issuers that they want to basically take the torch of the private capital creation of JP Morgan's, of Wells Fargo, Bank of Citi, of kind of the big four, the big banks of the US. There's a reason why the Bank of America CEO is saying, I'm going to make a stable coin and all this. So is that going to be Tether? Is Tether going to become a $200 trillion issuer in the next 50 years? It's possible. But also it's very likely that Tether did its job and was, again, this sort of dialectic of, oh, it's this offshore Ponzi. They don't have the money. It's Chinese real estate paper. They're going to blow up because of Evergrande. All the things that we've been told for years and years and years. The guy that holds all their treasuries is fucking running the Commerce Department. Cantor Fitzgerald is one of 24 primary dealers of the New York Fed. They're the largest, treasury clearinghouse in the U.S., which means in the world. Tether now holds $145 billion. That's like a pretty significant portion of our largest creditor of like China and Japan, they're below, $700 billion now in treasuries. Tether's, again, it's like a 3-person company and they have as much treasuries as China almost, or very soon will, if China keeps dumping and they keep buying, right? So we're seeing at a time where we need demand, Tether was there. Tether really yoked the dollar system to the Bitcoin system. But what we're going to see next, I think, is the next play. This will be my predictive thing here as we come up on an hour. I think that they're going to continue to lead with carrot and not with stick. And the way they're going to do that is with yield. And so the most important metric of how people are going to be onboarded into the US dollar system via stablecoins is how much are you going to get for having your money in one of these stablecoin issuers. And we've seen in the last few days, PayPal announced that they're going to give anybody that holds US dollars in Venmo or in PayPal, they're going to turn them into PYUSD, which is their stablecoin issued by Paxos. And we're going to give you like 3.7% yearly for keeping your money in there. That's a lot. Yes, the interest rate is 4.25%, 4.5%. They're making more by holding short-term treasuries, but you're still getting 3.7%. No bank gives you that. There's nowhere you can get a free 3.7% yield unless you're literally buying treasuries yourself. And that's not necessarily accessible for everybody in the world. You have to have certain brokerages. There's a lot of things you have to do to be able to buy them directly, reasonably at scale, while then also be able to liquidate and spend and buy coffee with them, right? So PYUSD is basically offering this, hey, you get 3.7%, you can grow your money past inflation, arguably, and earn yield on your money, and then also go be able to spend it at Starbucks or on eBay or anything. And you don't have to hold T-bills and then liquidate them through a brokerage and all this stuff. It's just in your PayPal account, in your Venmo account. And so that's the carrot that I think is going to onboard everybody. 3.7% is a humongous deal for the world, a dollar store of value, as we're going to see more and more insanity, as we've seen with tariffs, as we've seen with, the Trump administration is just, let's create as much volatility as possible. That's what this administration is trying to do. So that
stands strong throughout, and it
is
the safe haven during the crazy, tumultuous, chaotic,
absolutely
up and down of markets.
Yeah, and we'll see Bitcoin and gold continue to appreciate greatly too as more and more uncertainty happens. And I think honestly, eventually we'll see stocks go absolutely insane too, because the dollar is hemorrhaging value on an individual level. You want to hold things that that will be reflected in, that inflation will be reflected in. And so I think Bitcoin and gold will continue to do very well. And so we're going to see people onboarded into the stablecoin dollar system via some yield. And the yield is very interesting because the regulation is going to directly kingmake who gets to give the yield. And right now, there's only one bank in the world that has a charter from the US government to be able to offer yield and do some of these banking services. And that is Anchorage Digital, which happens to do the rewards for PYUSD. It just so happens that on the last days of the first Trump administration, Brian Brooks, who was the officer of the comptroller of the currency, he was picked by Steve Mnuchin to run that. He comes in and on his last days as he's leaving, signs a charter and gives Anchorage Digital, hey, you are a chartered bank. No other bank has that. Everyone else is applying for it now, Circle, Coinbase, all these other groups. But they have that advantage. They have the regulatory king-making advantage built into the first Trump administration. And now we're seeing Trump, he can't stop talking about stablecoins. Everyone says he's the first Bitcoin president. He's the first stablecoin president. And really, he was the first stablecoin president in his first administration. And Brian Brooks created the charter for Anchorage Digital and also put out the bulletin that said banks could hold stablecoins and use crypto assets. It was while Trump is tweeting out, drinking a Diet Coke, being like, Bitcoin sucks, the dollar's sick, whatever. His administration is doing everything they can to make Bitcoin and stablecoins legitimate. And now we're kind of at the moment of world trade where everybody has their hands, they're dealt. they're putting their hands down to show what they have. And the US dollar system and the Trump administration has all of the technology ready, has all of the Bitcoin, has a bunch of aces up their sleeves. They're ready while the rest of the world is scrambling. The ECB is putting out reports being like, we're not going to be able to keep money in the Eurozone if dollar stable coins are on the internet and anyone can access the dollar. Like they're realizing
hey guys,
it now.
Wait a second. If Bitcoin takes off, we're screwed. It's like official reports. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's sort of where we're at right now. And it's the time to lay down your hands as the US is doing and creating the most volatility as possible on the global economic stage. I think we're going to see the stablecoin play go bananas, and I think we're going to see Bitcoin go bananas. So
let me interject here because we're coming up on an hour, and I think you've like hit the core beats.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because I had 10 other topics that we will not talk about now.
Right.
Like I wanted to get your thoughts on like this tokenizing everything, the role of like the switch up of certain Bitcoiners in conflict of interest, and like stablecoin to stablecoin competition. But I will not ask that. I'm going to hard wrap this up and have you respond to the beginning of the conclusion in your book.
Okay.
Which I think is very, very poetic. So this is the end of the Bitcoin dollar, conclusion, a means to an end, and I'll have you respond to this with maybe kind of like, what does the Bitcoiner do who wants freedom, who wants the happy path forwards? So the reading is as follows. The Bitcoin dollar will most likely operate throughout the remainder of our lives. State-issued money will certainly not go down without a fight. The only way the Bitcoin experiment will succeed is if its participants realize the extended competitive cooperative game being played by agents with direct access to the levers of state-issued money. The value of the native asset of the settlement network is ultimately upheld by users' actions. This is meant quite literally, such as when the block reward approaches zero, and also by less obvious means, never sell your Bitcoin. What do you leave the listener with who is gray and sometimes black-pilled listening to you outlay this Bitcoin dollar problem? Where do they go from here? What do we do?
Yeah, it's funny. I get called black-pilled a lot. And, I work a lot with Whitney Webb, and she gets called black-pilled a lot. And we get called black-pilled a lot because we're pointing out the reality that we see, and we're just saying it as it is. And for some reason, there's an element of like, I'm just a doomer because I'm pointing out these mechanisms, and I'm pointing out, hey, maybe the same thing that empowers the poor guy without banking access in the global south is also going to empower the largest terrorist organization in the world. It would seem like that shouldn't be a black pill and is just the truth. But there's a bit of a shoot the messenger, shoot the deprogrammer element that I get accused of quite a bit. And if you know me at all, I'm not an unhappy person at all. I'm extremely happy. I think that specifically as it relates to Bitcoin, the reason why I'm doing this and putting so much effort into trying to make people aware of this is not because I think the game is over, but because I think the game is going. If I thought the game was over, I would not be a public figure at all. I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be talking to you. I wouldn't be showing my face. But I think it's important, and I think people need to know who set up these mechanisms, what the mechanisms are, and how we can fight them, and how we can meaningfully push back against these systems that are trying to oppress us using this technology that supposedly was built to free us. And you have to be very honest about technology. It's not necessarily innately good or bad. It just is what it is. And there's a lot of amazing things that are very interesting about Bitcoin. And there's a lot of things that are not perfect about Bitcoin, like the internet, like a shovel or a shotgun. It's just, they're just tools. They are means to an end. And not every tool is the perfect means to an end for every single person. And so Bitcoiners need to be aware that there's an absolutely potential for, an empowerment of evil forces in the world because of sound money. Bitcoin is a state change of money. It is important. There's a lot of people that just look at Bitcoin and they go, it's a Trojan horse for CBDCs and it's all fake and it's a Ponzi, and they dismiss it. Even though they might be right about certain downsides of Bitcoin, maybe as a surveillance tool or whatever, but they miss what's actually happening economically and how that this is a state change where there is a neutral issued asset that's never existed before. There's never been scarcity before in an asset ever. We have that mathematically. So to ignore the good because there's bad is wrong, and to ignore the bad because there's good is wrong. So Bitcoiners, I don't think that there is a singular answer for every single Bitcoiner of what they should do having this information. Much like Bitcoin isn't a singular answer for every single person in the world, it's not going to fix the world on its own. Bitcoin has an opportunity, if it is going to empower the state, it also has the opportunity to empower 10,000 to a million dissonant libertarian folks who want to build a better world that can circumnavigate the power structures of the state and of the people that control the state. And so I can use Bitcoin personally as a way to exit and to build and to create an area where I can raise a family. And no one can tell me what to do. No one can tell me what medicine I need to take, what things I need to say, what digital ID I need to use, what things I need to consent to. I can grow my own food and live in the middle of nowhere and do the things that I want to do with my life and spend the time researching and doing the work that I want to do, beholden to no one, because Bitcoin has given me that ability. Bitcoin can't give everybody that ability, but it can give a lot of us that ability. What do you want to do with it? Do you want to start a militia? Do you want to go raid the Capitol? That's you. If you want to do that, do that. I don't think that that's necessarily the best option. I think the answer is creating your own world, your own reality that is beautiful for you and allows you to grow a family and create your own system that is completely independent of the matrix and power structures that exist in day-to-day society today. So Bitcoin can be used for that. Bitcoin can also be used to empower the state, push everybody to private issued stablecoins on public blockchains, make 100 million to 10,000 people very, very rich and very free, and then the 7.1 or 9 billion people extremely unfree. All of those things are true and can happen. So you have to just be aware of what it is that you want. Life is a game. Monetary systems are games. Bitcoin is a game. It is a live, active game. I think the only responsibility we have if we're going to take advantage of the monetization of this new asset class, the only responsibility Bitcoiners have to Bitcoin is to leave it as permissionless as it was when we found it. And unfortunately, I think it is less permissionless in terms of access to a greater source of people as supply centralizes, as mining centralizes, and as people are getting pushed to and consent is being purchased towards Bitcoin being just another ticker and another ETF. The dissonants are being bought out. And so, Bitcoiners need to decide what they want for themselves, fight for Bitcoin to be as permissionless as it was when they found it, that allowed them to be in the you position. And when the time is ready to leave and walk away, I think we should leave and walk away, and go build the lives that we want. And we don't need to be in the trenches if we don't want to. But let's set everybody up with the tools and the awareness to dig themselves out of the trenches, and not just create this scenario where 10,000 people are really free and 7.9 billion people are in hell. Because I don't want to live in a world like that. I care too much about other people. I know I can't save everybody. Bitcoin won't save everybody. But if we do it right, I think Bitcoin can save billions of people and get them out from the regime of central banking. And I think we can do it in a way that is a net positive for the world and for the individual. I am certain Bitcoin can save the individual. I'm not sure it can save the world. I think while we can and while we are saved individuals, we should do everything we can to try to save the world. And part of that is explaining what Bitcoin is limited by. And if we can't do that and we can't be real about it, then we have no chance at building parallel systems and building the tools we need to fix the world. So that's sort of what I feel my role is in the Bitcoin space, is just being the Chicken Little of sorts. Not that I'm paranoid, not that I'm unhappy, not that I'm depressed, not that I'm black-pilled, but this is just the reality of Bitcoin. Let's maximize UTX ownership. Let's try to make scaling solutions that are private. The only way Bitcoin will work as a private money is if it has a huge payment system, because it needs scaling to be private. If we have competition from stablecoins, we will never achieve a huge payment systems. We will never achieve privacy, and we will continue the dual banking system of the treasury system, and the US dollar system will live for 1,000 years. And I don't want that. I don't think you want that. So just be real and keep fighting. And don't get depressed, because it's still an active game and a lot can happen. Programmable money, we can program it. We can change it.
The world has never been changed. Well, the world is rarely changed by black pill people. It's almost always people who are in the trenches with optimistic views of the world. The Bitcoin, the government's going to pump your Bitcoin bags, but they will not make Bitcoin free. That is to you, the listener, and the individual. So, Mark, thank you so much for coming on to Bitcoin Season 2. I feel that there are many topics we can cover some other time down the road, but I wish you the best. And we'll make sure, if you're listening to this, follow Mark on X and his incredible library of material, in particular, the Bitcoin dollar. So shout out, Mark, for writing this. And I will talk to you next time.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.